she's struggling a little bit in some health issues, but she's got these magnifying glasses. When you're older, you appreciate glasses, magnifying glasses, don't you? And why do you have a magnifying glass? What's the purpose of a magnifying glass? It makes small things bigger. There you go. Thank you, Carrie.
People with good eyes write small.
What'd you say?
People with good eyes write too small.
People with good eyes write too small. And sometimes, you know, these days, in this day and age, you got to read the small print, right? Because you don't even know what you're signing away. Anyway, it makes small things bigger. I believe many of us, the reason that we're shut down in our doubts is that we have put a magnifying glass and are looking at ourselves, at our abilities, our inabilities, what we can do, what we think we can do, what we haven't done, our mistakes, our this, our that, and we enlarge it. And what we focus on is what we see. And when we enlarge ourselves, God gets smaller in our life. What if we would magnify Him? He's called me. Why? Because He's God. He has the ability and the power to carry out. Now, this is what He's called us. He says, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and what? Make disciples of all nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. And guess what? I'm going to be with you always to the end of the age. These are a bunch of doubters. Well, some of them are doubting, some of them are worshiping. Probably most of them had some worship and doubt going on in their lives. The future of the success of Jesus' mission on the earth was left in these doubting disciples. But Jesus said, I'm not focusing on your doubts. I've called you. Go. How many are employed here? You got a job? Anybody have a job here? Yeah, just... What if... Now, Jeff, if your boss tells you, I want you to do such and such, and you say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do that. Have you done that kind of stuff?
No.
You've never done that?
Well, I've had my doubts.
Okay, you've had your doubts, but you pushed through.
Yeah, I pushed through.
You pushed through, and
Yeah.
and evidently you made it happen.
Yeah.
Some of us would never think of doing that to our employers. Jesus is not giving us a suggestion. He says, I want you to go. I want you to make disciples. I want you to baptize people in the name of God. I want you to teach others, those disciples, to obey. And I'm going to be with you. This is God's part. God's part is that He is to choose our life purpose, which is making disciples, baptizing people in the name of God, and that's what He's asked us to do. I mean, we don't understand the seriousness. Because He says that I want you to teach disciples to obey everything. Teach these disciples to obey everything that I taught you. Every little thing. How many have said, well, that was the disciples back then. That's what Jesus asked the disciples to do back then. That's not... He says, There's no difference. There's no dispensation theology. Whatever I ask you to do, I want you to pass it on, and that's what the believers after you are to do, the same thing that I ask you to do. Now, God's part is that He chooses our mission, and then He's going to empower us to do it, because He says, I'm going to be with you. The disciples already knew that. Whenever Jesus was with us, He bailed us out and made it happen. The one time when Jesus came down from the mountain and these disciples couldn't cast out that one spirit, because it says because they didn't pray and they didn't fast. Well, Jesus came and cleaned it up. Jesus said, I'm going to be with you. This isn't dependent on you. This is dependent on me. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to choose to ask you to do what I've asked you to do because I know you. And I know what makes you click, and I know what makes you happy, and I know what the kind of life that's going to be the best life for you. Just trust me in this. I know you have your doubts, man, but I don't know how to talk to people. I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do. We have all our, because we're looking at ourselves. And I would encourage you. I would encourage us. As a small church, there's just 11. There's more than 11 here. "11 changed the world." Turn to your neighbor and say, do you hear Jesus talking to you?
Do you hear Jesus talking to you?
Do you hear Jesus talking to you? It's basically a question. Am I going to live a holy life? Or am I going to live my life? That's what it means. That's all it is. This isn't that complicated. We wouldn't think about doing that to our earthly employer. Because it would be insubordination if we would do that, and with our earthly employer, we'd get fired. God is inviting us to the greatest adventure on the face of the earth. Now, have you thought about this? Teach disciples to... How do I teach people to obey? How do you teach people to obey? Okay, parents. You had kids? I know. How do you teach your kids to obey?
Lose your hair. Get the belt.
How do you teach obedience?
Just spank them.
Intimidation would go.
Get the battle with the horns. We talked about that last week.
Okay, so there needs to be a spanking, huh?
Consistency, discipline.
Okay, the spanking or... What? How do you teach obedience?
Example.
I think that's the primary one over there.
Good job, Aaron.
How do you teach the best way? Come on, friends. We know our kids, in the end, do what we do, not what we say. Just think about it. I don't care what we've said, how we fanned their bottom, whatever we've done. In the end, our kids will follow our example. That's what they'll do. So when Jesus is saying is teaching them to obey, I think it's a kind of a backdoor approach to say, you obey first. That's what it means. Will you please follow me? And as you follow me, that's the biggest deal. People will follow after your example.